Howdy, welcome back to another Hunt Showdown video. My name is Michael Exile, and boy do we have a lot of Hunt news dropping today. Crytek has just held a dev stream for patch 1.6.1, mostly containing quality of life changes as well as some smaller adjustments. This patch follows the Dassault map update patch that contained the new map as well as the star ranking system that brought more transparency to the MMR rating system in the game, and I'd say that was a really great patch, and it looks like 1.6.1 is looking no different. Crytek has stated that the reason for this update is in preparation for Light the Dark, which is something that the Hunt Showdown Twitter has teased earlier this week. So in this video, I'll be going over the most notable changes coming with this patch, how these changes will affect your experience, as well as what the hell Light the Dark could even be. So let's jump straight into it. But before I do, let me just say that I do stream on Twitch over at twitch.tv/MichaelExile. I play a lot of Hunt Showdown and horror games, and with about 2,000 hours in Hunt, I'd say that I have a pretty solid understanding of the game. So if you want to stop by and ask for some tips and tricks, or if you just want to talk about balance changes or what could be coming to the game with these new patch notes and these teasers, I would love to talk about it with you. Or if you just want to come and hang out with my community, we're a bunch of great people, I'd say, and we would love to have you. So I will leave this link in the description below. Go drop a follow if you'd like. It would mean a lot. But for now, let's get into the video. So let's start out with the highlights of the 1.6.1 patch notes. The first listed change allows you to leave ADS during shots. And if you were around during the time where the quick swap nerf was implemented into the game, you know that a side effect of that change was that you could not leave aiming down sights until the recoil animation for that weapon was done. So with this change, you'll be able to come out of ADS almost immediately after you shoot and be able to move normally as opposed to the slower movement when you're aiming down sights. This is going to be a very welcome change for a lot of the player base. Because after the quick swap nerf, since you have to wait for the recoil animation, you would essentially be stuck in ADS sensitivity rather than your normal sensitivity, since you're basically still aiming down sights while the animation is going. So a visual difference you'll see with this change is that as soon as you stop ADSing after you fire, you'll notice that your gun will lower and the recoil animation will still go through and you'll be able to turn at full sensitivity. It's a pretty great change, so I don't think anyone will have a problem with it. This next change is for you controller players out there, whether you're on PC or a console. It's called the Force Reload. This change allows you to prioritize reloading your weapon as opposed to interacting with anything that's around you. This is done by opening the weapon wheel first, which helps you ignore every other interactable around you, and then you can press your reload button. And if you're wondering why this change is even a thing to begin with, apparently controller players were accidentally interacting with window shutters and bells as opposed to reloading their weapon. So I can understand how that's pretty annoying. Controllers don't really have as much buttons as a full keyboard and mouse, you know? So I'm glad they sorted this out for you controller players out there. That sounds really annoying. Next up are changes to the Gunslinger control scheme. And if you're a Gunslinger user like me, you're going to be very happy about this change. Crytek has added the ability to lower your weapons and items while using Gunslinger, like Hunter mode. So to lower your weapon, all you'll have to do is hold Q. And the first question that came to my mind was what's going to happen to quick swapping with Q. Luckily, quick swap is still on Q and you still only have to tap it. Lower weapons is just holding Q, so you just have to differentiate between the two. But yeah, that's a nice clarification to have. The only downside to this change is that since your weapon has to be raised from the lower state, there is a slight delay from that lower state to the ADS state. So it wasn't very noticeable for me, but you might notice it yourself while you're trying to like aim down sights when you see somebody. It'll be a little bit delayed, but I hardly noticed it. And for some clarification for some Gunslinger users out there like myself, it does not require multiple inputs after this change. It's still a simple right click or whatever your aim down sights keybind is. The only thing that really changes here is that you won't be in hip fire before you ADS if you have your weapon lowered. You'll go straight from the lowered state to the aim down sights. With this feature in effect, though, I think it might raise some concerns for hip fire. It's definitely going to take some adjusting since you can still fire while your gun is lowered, you just won't have a crosshair. And to get your hip fire crosshair back, you either have to quickly ADS and let go or hold Q again to raise your weapon. Surely this won't be an issue for most players, though, I'd imagine. Crytek has also added an option called Keep Lowered State on the menu setting that allows you to choose whether or not your weapon goes back to the lowered state when it's aimed or fired. Meaning if you fire your gun while you have this option enabled and you un-ADS, your weapon will immediately go back to the lowered state as opposed to hip fire. If you have this option disabled, your weapon would have to be manually lowered again, meaning that after you fire or aim, your weapon will go back into hip fire mode. As a Gunslinger player, I'm really excited to see these changes. For those who are unaware, there's been an ongoing debate on whether or not Gunslinger or Hunter control scheme is better. And the biggest downsides to Gunslinger that are constantly brought up are that your weapon would point out of windows when you're looking through a window, or sometimes if you're hiding behind a wall, your gun would clip through the wall and players would be able to see where you're at. Also, if you don't know this, if you don't have your weapon lowered, you have a lower FOV. And Gunslinger up until this point did not have the option to lower their weapon, therefore they just constantly had a lower FOV. So, the gap between the Hunter control scheme and the Gunslinger control scheme is getting closed a bit, and that's exciting to see. This is a huge win for Gunslinger players. But the Hunter control scheme also got some love as well. The Hunter control scheme can now have a dedicated melee button, meaning that you can have an alternate key binding that allows you to melee while you're aiming down sights or in shoulder aim. I didn't even know that you had to have your weapon lowered before you can melee on Hunter scheme. So this sounds like a good change to me. They have also added an option that allows you to pick what happens when you aim during sprint. The two options are shoulder aim and aim down sights. The current Hunter control scheme on live only allows you to go into shoulder aim first and then ADS, which can feel a little bit clunky, and which is why a lot of people chose Gunslinger. But it's nice to see they added that option for people that would prefer to go straight into ADS as opposed to the current shoulder aim and then ADS. A shoulder aim toggle has also been added to the menu settings, and it allows you to set shoulder aim to toggle or hold, meaning if you just wanted to press a button and let go and be in shoulder aim, you're more than welcome to. This can make it easier for a lot of people who wanted to use the Hunter controls but didn't like the fact that you had to hold shift and then press right click while you're still holding shift to aim down sights. So you could just tap shift and let go and press your aim down sights whenever you wanted to. Not a bad change at all. I really like the overall customization they are allowing for these control schemes now. The next options they've added are auto interact options, which allows you to hold an interaction button continuously and automatically interact with objects around you. So if you're like me and you struggle a little bit during fights when you're trying to open doors and you have to wait for the prompt to pop up before you open the door, this one's for you. So instead of running at a door and face planting into it because you didn't press your interact button at the right time, you could just hold your interact button and run right at the door and it will open as soon as you get to it. This works with all interactables, so gates, armor doors, lanterns, ammo boxes, you name it, it works with it. You will still have the ability to single click interactables. You don't have to hold your interact button for every single interactable. If you just wanted to close one window and run away, you can do that by just tapping, or if you want to hold it just to make sure you get it right, you can do that as well. This option is also disabled by default. This option can help guarantee that you're going to open a door when you run up to it as opposed to struggling to look for the prompt and then open it. It's going to be a very useful change for a lot of people. This next change brings us back to the field of view discussion. Like I mentioned previously, when you're in shoulder aim with Gunslinger, you have a shorter FOV, and you really don't have any control over that. And on the Hunter control scheme currently, the lowered weapon state gives you a higher FOV. While the Gunslinger changes we just mentioned already combat this issue, they further expand on it by allowing you to have the option to decide whether or not you want your FOV to be zoomed or default, which is the higher FOV, in lowered state or shoulder aim. Meaning, if you wanted your lowered state FOV to be zoomed for whatever reason, you can have that, or you can just leave it at default. If you wanted your shoulder aim FOV to be zoomed, like Gunslinger has currently, you can keep that, or you can widen your FOV by putting it on default. So at this point, the control schemes are just purely down to preference. There's no advantage or disadvantage to either of them. You could also use these options to smooth out the transition between shoulder aim and lowered state, especially with the new Gunslinger changes. If they didn't add this option, you'd notice that when you went from lowered state to shoulder aim, your FOV would get smaller, and then when you go into ADS, your FOV would get even smaller. So if you don't like that transition, you know, if it makes you nauseous like it does for me, then you could turn that off and set it all to default. So when you're in lowered state, it has the same FOV as your shoulder aim. Now, with all the smaller quality of life changes out of the way, let's get to the juicier parts of these patch notes. Starting off with new menu animations. These animations are weapon equip animations as well as legendary hunter intros. Meaning, when you equip a weapon onto your hunter, instead of the static animation where the weapon disappears in their hand, they will pull out the weapon with a stylish animation. As for the legendary intros, each legendary hunter will have their own unique legendary hunter entrance. So when you recruit a legendary hunter or you look at a legendary hunter in the store page, they will have their own unique signature entrance. And if you die to a legendary hunter, on the death screen, they will do their signature animation as well. They also have their own sounds for their entrances as well, which I think the Redneck has the best one so far. Now it's time for the most controversial change of this entire patch notes, and I've just been waiting to talk about this one. It is a new bounty revive mechanic. What this essentially allows you to do is revive a Red Skull teammate when you are a bounty carrier. Yes, you're hearing this right. You are now able to revive a red skulled teammate. And if you don't know what red skulled means, it means that your teammate has lost all their health, and in the live game right now, you are not able to revive anybody that has lost all their health chunks. So the way this works is you revive your red skulled teammate like normal, except it drains 25 HP per revive. So it works very much like the necromancer trait. And notice that I did say per revive, meaning at the time of me recording this, you can revive your teammate an unlimited amount of times. When this player is revived, they will have a maximum of 50 HP. It's always going to be one large health chunk. This also does not work with Necromancer, so you will have to physically be there to revive your teammate. So a little bit more thought will have to be put into this, since if you revive your teammate and they get farmed, they'll be full dead again, and you'll be down 25 HP. You'll just have to be a little bit more aware when you're doing it, as you usually would with any other revive. Bounty revives also do not reward XP, and if a dead hunter is in the extraction range, it stops the extraction. Meaning if there's a red skull teammate on the enemy team, they cannot extract if they have a bounty. Meaning a living teammate with the bounty token will have to revive them, or if the dead hunter has the bounty token, a teammate will have to pick that token up and then revive their teammate. There's really no wondering why this change is the most controversial of all the changes they've ever done. In the live game currently, I feel that players already have more than enough lives to make the most out of a match. And I personally think that the health chunk system is what makes the game so intense. If I kill a player a certain amount of times or I burn them out with a Molotov and their teammate doesn't help them at all, I think they deserve to be at that position. For example, in my experience, I've had a lot of bounty carriers camping in compounds. Oftentimes, if I catch one of their teammates in a bad position, I will emphasize on that, kill them, and burn them if I can. And no matter how much I burn them with this change in effect, they have comfort in knowing that they could just pick him up at any time. So if they wanted to, they could just hide in the building the whole time still and run down the clock until I get bored to death or we just all die to the timer. And quite frankly, I don't want to sit there for 20-30 minutes just because I want the bounty. Granted, Crytek has given some insight on why they're bringing this change to begin with. The first point being that a lot of teams currently leave the bounty behind so they don't give their position away when they're moving across the map to another bounty or to another fight. The second point that was made is that sometimes it sucks to get red skulled when you're in the middle of an all-out war and your team happens to clutch it out and they get to extract but you don't. I personally agree with that point because it's cool to see your team clutch it up, but it sucks to not get the reward for that since you're dead and they're not. As for the first point, I don't really agree with it because I still think that leaving the bounty is always going to be a strategy. A lot of people like to go for kills and they want to get the upper hand. They're always going to be doing that, especially the veteran players. I think a lot of the time, people don't really care about having the bounty when they just want to go for kills. But yeah, since this is the most controversial change in these patch notes, let me know what you think in the comments below. I really would like to know your thoughts. And that is all the beefy changes out of the way. Now let's just briefly go over all the general updates. The first of these smaller changes has to do with item deployment. You are now able to place tripwires on stairs and steep slopes, and the collision has been improved for bear traps and ammo boxes. Being able to place traps on stairs is huge, and having an improved collision detection for bear traps and ammo boxes means you have to spend a lot less time looking for that sweet spot to place your trap or ammo box, so this is pretty good. There are also changes done to the item deployment preview, meaning the thing you see before you place your item. I'll have those changes on the screen. A couple of changes have been made to the round start as well. So when you spawn in, your hunters will now play the weapon equip animation at the start of the round. So I'm guessing the same animation that you see on the main menu when you equip a weapon will be visible in first person at the start of the round, which is pretty cool. All weapon actions except shooting and melee attacks are now available to use during the waiting for players state. So if you have a weapon that's not fully loaded, or if you have like custom ammo or you have a LeMat or something and you want to switch to the shotgun on the LeMat, you can do that while you're waiting for the round to start. Or if you have a Winnie and you want to load that last bullet into the chamber, you can go ahead and do that. Health chunks have also received a change. 50 HP health chunks now cost 2 trait points as opposed to 3 trait points. You are now able to choose between toggle or hold to see the map. As for traits, random traits tied to legendary hunters now have more combinations available, and the possible traits that can be acquired from rifts and quick play have been updated. My guess here is that certain traits weren't being given to legendary hunters at all, so they wanted to add more combinations to that. Bolt Seer has also received a change, and I think this is a pretty interesting one because we know exactly why this change has been made, but they enhanced the visibility of items so you can find your lost bolts and throwing knives a lot easier, and they added a little comment to it saying, "and other items, cough, light the shadow, cough." So this clearly means that you're going to be able to find the arrows that you shoot with your bow when the new event comes out. This is also an interesting change. The range of Bolt Seer has been increased to 30 meters as opposed to 15 meters, so it's sounding like they want Bolt Seer to be more effective for longer range weapons. Wonder what weapon that could be. And last but not least, there is one more coincidental change they are bringing to weapon stats. The stat is called Sighted Range, and this is the range at which the projectile drop will impact your accuracy in relation to the sights of the weapons. This stat is definitely being implemented to help you better understand when your projectile is going to start falling, and to help you compensate your aim for however far your enemy is. This will definitely be more helpful for people that struggle with projectile weapons. And we will most definitely be seeing a lot more projectile weapons when the Light the Shadow event comes out. Speaking of, since we're done with the patch notes, let's start talking about Light the Shadow for a bit. So, if you haven't been out of the loop for the past few months, you would know that Hunt Showdown released a trailer a few months back called the Dark Side trailer. Not only was this trailer a beautiful representation of what the game is all about, but it also included a ton of hints on what's to come to the game in the future. This includes the Crow boss, the DeSaul map, the Monroe DLC, and what we haven't gotten yet is the indigenous characters and the bow as a weapon. And after all this time since the Darkside trailer came out, we finally got a teaser that includes the indigenous characters that we saw in the Darkside trailer. The character that was included in the teaser just this week is the same character that was holding the bow in the Darkside trailer. In the image for the teaser that was posted, you can see that on the character's eyes, they have a glow in their eyes that looks like fire, and there's also a glow to the left of the image that looks like it could be like a fire arrow. This makes me believe that we're going to have custom ammo for a bow, and I feel like it wouldn't be too far off considering that we already have custom ammo in the game, so we could be getting flame arrows. But then that leaves the question, what is that glow in their eye? My guess is that they are looking at a field that is on fire. And if you think back to the Darkside trailer for a second, you will remember that there was a field on fire, which is currently not a feature that is in the game currently. Oddly enough, this change was not in the patch notes, but I'm guessing they are holding it out for when the event comes out as a surprise. Also, if you want another fun little Easter egg, I think they also hinted at the bounty revival mechanic that they just brought in with this patch notes as well. But back on the topic of Light the Shadow, clearly it's going to be a lore event as opposed to a seasonal event. It's clearly going to be similar to the As the Crow Flies event where we had to unlock the Crow boss. Hopefully, fingers crossed that it is not the same format as that though, as not a lot of people received that one very well. My only guess is that the lore for this event will be taking on the story of the indigenous characters that were revealed in the teaser and the Darkside trailer. Given that the name of the event is Light the Shadow, I get the impression that it's about fighting back against the evil on their land, whether it be the zombies and the hellhounds, or the actual people living on their land. Or it could be both. Regardless, that's just a theory for me. That's just the impression I get. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Enough of my tinfoil hat theories, though. I sincerely hope that this event is a little bit more exciting than the last few. Getting a new weapon alone might make it a little bit more exciting for players, but I personally think that the format of these events needs to change. I find more oftentimes than not, after about a couple of weeks, a lot of players are just begging for the event to end so they can go back to playing normally. When these events are active, a lot of players are prioritizing getting points as opposed to actually playing the objective. And that can lead to very boring games where you're not fighting very many people. So for this event, I would like to see the incentives lean more towards player interaction and going for the bounty. Since I know these events will always have skins tied to them and we will have to unlock them with points somehow, I think it would be a lot better in the long run to implement challenges similar to like a battle pass. And the objectives that currently exist with past events don't need to go away at all. The challenges could just give a faster way to unlock these skins via harder challenges as opposed to just solely depending on objectives that are placed around the map. I personally would just like to be incentivized for going for other players and bounties during these events. Overall, patch 1.6.1 looks awesome. The bounty revival mechanic has me very eager to see how it works out. There's definitely going to be a lot of changes made to it before it reaches live, hopefully. Let's just hope by the time it reaches live that it's not as troublesome as most of us think. But that's going to conclude the video for me. Once again, I encourage you to leave comments below on any thoughts you may have had during this video. I enjoyed making this video, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. Once again, if you want to talk all things hunt, I do stream on Twitch, so if you want to go drop a follow and discuss all the feature changes coming to the game, I'd love to have you. Also, leave a like if you liked the video, leave a dislike if you didn't, leave a comment what you think I could do better, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys in the Bayou with patch 1.6.1 and the Light the Shadow event in 13 days. Peace.